When we have a sitter, the sitter would potentially ask us about their career. This is when we have a reading starting. You can ask the sitter what are some things that you want to focus on, and if career is one of them, you want to create a visual of what is it that they're currently busy with. What is the career that they're in? What are the dynamics around it? And we want to also get a representation of that. We don't really want to have too much information up front regarding what the career is about, if there are any problems or any situations that are currently existing. This is front loading, and when we get front loaded, it just means that we have now a lot of information already about the person's career, and it becomes harder and harder to become objective about it. So we have the person, we then create their current career, and then we see what is it that is happening between the two of them. We look at the interaction on our reading screens now between the sitter and their career, and what is the situation with the two of them. How do they interact? Does the career section do something specific? So you could have that the person interacts with their career flower and the flower engulfs them, or that they interact with the flower in a way where they kind of circle around it. They can interact with the flower in many different ways. It's not going to be that you definitely going to have this or that or the other. It's very much about create the two and see how they interact. The real important thing, again, now that we're doing training, is that when you read about someone's career, that we get feedback about it, and you start to get an idea about what certain things mean when the flower and the interaction with the flower and the sitter is a certain thing. Then you would have a certain result for it. So you could say what you see, but then you could have an idea from historic evidence, so from feedback you've gotten before, what it could be. This then becomes really powerful, seeing as you build up a library of symbols or symbology between the sitter and the career. However, really look at what the situation means for you, and you can ask questions around it, and those questions can then clarify what you are seeing. So again, probing is very important. In letter to interact, then ask questions, really be critical about what you want to know and see how it plays out. Very importantly, we don't really want to have too much of our own ideas in here. We really want to see what images come up. We want to get the interaction between the two and tell the sitter what it is. With careers, of course, we have a lot of dynamics. We have a lot of people involved in careers. So we want to see also who is interacting with the person. So we could have other people interacting with this person. If you think of general career options, you can have a person interacting with their clients. You can have persons interacting with their superiors, with colleagues. They can form friendships at work. They can form rivalries at work. They can have certain clients that act towards them in a certain way. They could have maybe potentially difficulties with people that they deal with, or they could have a lot of symbiotic relationships with other people around them. So what you really want to do is have a look at them, their relationship to other people in the area, and see what the dynamics are, and then give it through to them so that we can kind of understand, well, where are they now? One of the important things about doing a reading for someone is to see, well, what is it that's not there? What is missing? What do they need? What is something that they might want more of? We can then play around with this on our reading screens and say, well, let's move the people around in the company. Maybe we have our sitter in a different position, or we give them different responsibilities, or we move them around and see, well, how do they react to it? We could also potentially play off different situations with a colleague or a client or a customer that we have the sitter interact with, and then see what are potentially some of the options that they would have. Also, what is it that they could use more or less of? What is it that they could do more of at work? Maybe they're doing too much. Maybe they're overextending themselves. And when they're overextending themselves, they could really do, say, less of a certain task. Maybe they're taking over the tasks of someone else, and this could potentially create problems for them. So they would overwork themselves or get into a situation where a lot of responsibility that are not there get piled on top of them. So you really want to have a look at all the dynamics around a career situation, the career itself, the workload, the also the status of the company. What is the company's health? What is the company's procedures? What is the company's status quo? How, does the person fit into that? Does the person fit into the culture? What is the culture of the business? So there are a lot of different aspects regarding someone's work that interact on them, and you really potentially want to see, well, how does that person work into that? Typically, the best thing to do is to follow your gut and go for the things that you really feel are necessary to deal with. As you can see, there's a lot to this. You can explore every single option. Unfortunately, there is normally a limited time that we can focus on someone, so to go too wide with this could be problematic. So you really want to see what you believe is the problem. I would also say that it would be a good idea to check with the person. What sometimes does happen is that you pick up a problem or a situation and that person doesn't see it as a problem. Then they want you to steer clear of that, and this is a good idea to ask them if it makes sense, or if they want you to explore something further. You can ask them if they want you to look into something further, or if this is something that they want you to look at. If you find it's really important and you alert them to it and say, look, I really feel like we have to deal with this. If they say, no, I don't want to deal with this right now, you say, look, do you want me to move on? Yes, please move on, and then you could move on from there. But of course, this is with the sitter. Also, remember, our intention is to really get the best for the person that's in front of us, be objective about it, and give them the information that's really important for them to have. So this becomes a little bit tricky if they get sort of feisty about it, and if they don't really want you to focus on specific things. But use your discretion, use your gut feel, and then go in a direction that you feel fitting. Also check with the sitter if this is then what they were expecting. Especially if they pay you, then there's a lot to do with their expectations. If the expectations are not met, then they tend to get a little bit upset about it. So this is something that you just have to be cognizant of. I would say when you're busy learning, it is a good idea to really get a feel for what is it that people would want, really see what you can offer, and then really stick to the images that you get. Really go into the images, really go into everything that you can for them. Look at the different angles. If you're really interested in something and it doesn't really interest them, kind of get a feel for where they are with that. Otherwise, if they say nothing, just go through the things step by step until you get to a conclusion that you feel is best for them. And then you could also look at different alternatives. So when you have the current career, you could also look and see, well, are there different options available to this person? Is there a possibility they could be headhunted? Is it a possibility that there's other options available for them, either within the company that they're with, or if there is something outside of the company that could potentially lure them away? Is there something maybe they should look at? Alternatively, maybe there's some skills that they could learn. Maybe there's a organization outside of their current one that they can interact with in order to broaden their skills, their experience. And this is something that's really important, because A lot of people want to advance in their careers, they want to end in the best place, and in order to do this, you bring up alternatives and say, okay, I want to create a representation, I want to create a flower for the alternatives, what the options are that this person has, and you can bring that up and see how the person interacts with that, how the current career interacts with that. Could they potentially have a side gig or a side hustle, and make some uh, inroads into that, really get some experience and do something that's valuable for them. Maybe it's just potentially a hobby that could substitute their work. I know of someone that had a hobby doing something specific, and this started to filter into their work, and then later on that became their career. So there's always this potential where people have alternatives, things that they can get busy with, whether they have an interest in it or whether it's something that they just want to explore. This would always be a good idea to look at and say, well, is there some way that they can advance themselves or build themselves up? Okay, so most importantly, we want to create all the alternatives on the career, the current career, see what all the dynamics are with the business, the person and the business, maybe if there's other people involved, what people are missing, what people are there, what the dynamics are between the people that are there, who they might need to still come in, create alternatives and say, well, is there something else they can consider? Is there other opportunities that may be lurking? So we want to really beat this thing to death and really get into all the different aspects and angles of what they can consider for themselves, so that they leave with quite a good view of, okay, where are they now, and then have a good idea about what you see for them that they can do in future. So this is just something they can consider. Acting on it is, of course, their responsibility, but we can play around with this and give them options and alternatives that they can look at for themselves. And this is something then that they could leave with and add value to their lives.